Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura-kisora Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare. So, to continue reading about Gaura-kisora Das Babaji. And this is section 6. The new Babaji. Having a little trouble with my throat. I just ate a couple little pieces of fresh coconut, and immediately I have this laryngitis. So, if ever anybody's going to be having to speak, don't eat any fresh coconut just before you're supposed to speak. Usually I take a little piece of bitter melon, and it'll open it up if, there's like a sore throat or mucus or something. But it doesn't seem to be doing a whole lot. But I want to keep reading, so it's going to be a little scratchy. But I'll do the best I can with it. Section 6, the new Babaji. A neophyte devotee who has taken the dress of a Babaji often came to converse with Babaji Maharaja. On one such occasion, he decided to take up residence in the holy Dham. He approached a certain queen who was living in Kulia and who owned land thereabouts, in order to purchase 3/4 of an acre of land from her. Upon hearing this news, Babaji Maharaj commented, "The supreme abode of the Lord is transcendental. How is it possible that this queen has become a landowner in the Dham? How is it that she is entitled to sell to the new Babaji a portion of the land of the Dham? All the jewels found within the universe are not valuable enough to purchase even one speck of dust in the Dham. Therefore, how can any landowner amass enough wealth to become the owner of a plot of the transcendental abode of Shrimad Dham? Has this new Baba, for the exchange of the practice of devotional service, become entitled to a portion of land in Navadvip Dham? Anyone with such materially tinged intelligence is very offensive and far away from actual residence within the Dham. Those persons whose attitude is thus tainted by materialistic intelligence, who think that the Dham is part of the material universe, are considered by the devotees of the Supreme Lord to be sahajiyas, cheap impostors." Section 7, Babaji Maharaj. Gaura-kisora Das Babaji Maharaj's analysis of this incident is very significant and fully exposes the mistaken attitude of the neophyte devotee. Nothing within the material creation can be possessed by anyone but the Supreme Proprietor. Ishivasham idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat. Everything is animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Supreme Lord. It's the Ishopanishad. It's the greatest illusion to imagine that any facet of the unlimited, valuable, and sublime spiritual realm, which is composed of Chintamani or the Philosopher's Stone, is within the jurisdiction of our controlling power. As a matter of convention, one may say that he owns something, but the real proprietor must never be forgotten. Otherwise, such a conception becomes a source of bewilderment. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur purchased land in the Dham, but he was never censured by Babaji Maharaj, because he perfectly understood who the real possessor was, and considered himself merely the custodian of the land. One cannot achieve true residence in the Dham by purchasing a ticket or a plot of land. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has explained the actual process for entering and residing in transcendental abodes such as Navadvip and Vrindavan. Visayacharya kabe, Sudahabe mana, kabe hama harabo Shri Vrindavan. When one has forsworn material sense gratification and his mind's completely purified, then he is able to behold Vrindavan. Section 8. Deception and Devotional Service. Once, a resident of Bangladesh, which was then East Bengal, who was a very wealthy landlord, scholar, and Brahmin, and reputed to be a great devotee of the Lord, came with a friend to see Srila Babaji Maharaj. The landowner appeared to be so deeply absorbed in devotional ecstasy that his friend had to support him as he walked, lest he fall down due to excessive trembling of the body. When the pair arrived before Babaji Maharaj, two other persons in the assembly, recognizing the famous landlord, immediately received him as an advanced devotee of the Lord. They carefully offered their obeisances to him and arranged a sitting place. At that time, Srila Gaura-kisora Babaji Maharaj, in his pastime of blindness, inquired, "Who has come?" The friend of the landowner introduced his companion by glowingly describing his erudition and devotion and his being disinterested in material sense gratification, despite possessing unlimited wealth. He then described how, only a fortnight earlier, a thief had come and stolen 45,000 rupees from the landlord's house. Despite suffering such a setback, the landowner, knowing devotion to be much more significant, had come to obtain Srila Babaji Maharaj transcendental darshan. The friend added, "I am his friend. He has left all material sense gratification and keeps only my association. You will be able to recognize his greatness by conversing with him. He once asked me a question about a confidential exchange between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Ramananda Roy, found in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I told him that only Gaura-kisora Babaji could properly answer his question, and certainly no one else. We've already been to see many learned persons in this area, and yet we cannot come to an agreement about the meaning of the conversation. We think that only you are able to explain it properly." After the introduction was complete, Srila Babaji Maharaj replied, "I will tell you a process by which you can understand the conclusion of this conversation. But before trying to understand these confidential topics between Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy, you should renounce the association of this rascal impostor, the landowner, and take shelter of a pure devotee of the Lord. You should hear Chaitanya Charitamrita 100 times in the association of authentic devotees of the Lord. In this way, being absorbed in devotional ecstasy, you will be able to realize the purport of these conversations. At the present moment, all the devotees here want to perform congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord. We don't have any time to discuss any other topics." Having thus spoken, Srila Babaji Maharaj very loudly requested that everyone perform Harinam Sankirtan. Everyone then began to congregationally chant the Lord's holy names. After hearing the statement of Babaji Maharaj, the proud landlord and his friend immediately left that place. Later that evening, when almost everyone had left, some members of the assembly commented to Babaji Maharaj, "That very learned landowner was absorbed in devotional ecstasy. We could not see any manifestation of material consciousness in him. He was devoid of worldly consciousness." Another person sitting nearby, who had always heard that Srila Gaura-kisora Babaji was very straightforward with everyone, inquired, That person was so immersed in various loving devotional ecstasies, he could not even walk by his own efforts. How is it that you can say he was not on the highest platform of bhakti? Srila Babaji Maharaja replied, saying, after speaking with him for a few moments, I could understand that he had no good intentions in his performance of devotional service. One cannot measure a person's devotion by the approval of the general mass. If a person is not serious in his devotional service, even if he exhibits the symptoms of renunciation, non-attachment, various ecstasies, still he should not be considered to have real renunciation or detachment. As soon as a difficult test comes, his false renunciation will cease. Detachment seeks out those who are actually fixed in their intention to perform devotional service. When performing practical devotional service, we should never exhibit our devotional ecstasies. We should perform devotional service in such a way that deep attachment to the Lord increases within his heart. Even if one displays hundreds and hundreds of exhibitions of external attachment, he will not be blessed by the Lord if he does not develop an internal loving attachment to him. So that sentence, in order to really make sense, it seems that it should be written, even if one displays hundreds and hundreds of exhibitions of external detachment, he will not be blessed by the Lord if he does not develop internal loving attachment to him. If one generally possesses a deep loving attitude, then Krishna himself will approach and claim such an advanced devotee. Whoever is not enticed by the fragrance of unflinching devotional service, and whose heart is filled with material desires, will wear different types of external bodily dress. Krishna is proportionately aloof or available according to the degree of one's surrender. If one is deeply immersed in devotional attachment to Lord Hari, then even while suffering distressing diseases or other material miseries, he will still remain absorbed in transcendental loving service to the Lord. If you can fast and chant Hare Krishna both day and night, and when you can always cry out with desire for the service of Vishnupada's Radharani, without revealing it to others, then Shri Krishna, who is very dear to Srimati Radharani, will call you to take his shelter. Srila Prabhupada, strictly following the line of Srila Gaura-kisora Babaji Maharaja's instructions, never made any sort of public display of ecstasy, and when his ecstatic emotions occasionally overpowered him, he would endeavor mightily to bring them in rein. This mood can be compared to that of Daruka, Krishna's charioteer, who was once fanning the Lord with a chamara, which is a yak-tail whisk. While thus engaged, he became overwhelmed with ecstatic love for the Lord, and the symptoms became manifest in his body. Srila Prabhupada comments, Daruka was so serious about his service that he checked all of these manifestations of ecstatic love and considered them hindrances to his engagement. He did not care very much for these manifestations, although they automatically developed. It is not that when one experiences spiritual ecstasy that he is required to put it on display for the education of ordinary persons. In India, it's very common for sahajiyas, those who take spiritual life cheaply, to make an elaborate public display of their ecstasies. Such displays are pale reflections of spiritual sentiments and are exhibited with material motives. This was clearly the case with the landlord who approached Srila Gaura-kisora Babaji. In Vrindavan and Navadvip, it is not at all uncommon that such a person will enter a temple with an assistant, or even a crowd of followers, and go before the deity. Seeing the deity and hearing the kirtan, he begins to dance wildly and finally faints. And the assistant or group of followers then minister him with great sympathy and concern. And thereafter, a curious throng of pilgrims gathers and witnesses the pathetic scene. When a sufficient crowd is gathered, the great soul revives and is assisted with great difficulty beyond the temple confines, where he hopes some of the unfortunate spectators will agree to become his followers and patrons. As Srila Gaura-kisora Babaji has demonstrated, the best procedure for dealing with such persons is to neglect them. The materialist's grains. A lawyer named Bhattacharya came to visit Babaji Maharaj. He was living in the vicinity and had contracted a certain caste Goswami on a monthly basis to supply him food. When the lawyer approached Babaji Maharaj, he was asked, "What arrangements do you have for your foodstuffs?" The lawyer replied, "I have arranged to receive my foodstuffs in the house of a certain Vaishnavas and Brahmins." Srila Gaura-kisora Babaji then answered, "Give up eating their cooked rice. You should cook for yourself and eat that. Those persons from whom you are accepting food grains eat meat and maintain their service to Lord Chaitanya in devious ways. Their activities are most offensive because they know that what they are doing is wrong. Those persons who have no fear of an offense they create to the Supreme Lord should never even be spoken to. Otherwise, devotional service will be spoiled." Sometime later, the lawyer brought several sweets and offered them to Srila Gaura-kisora Prabhu. He prayerfully requested Baba Maharaj to accept his offering. Srila Babaji Maharaj then told him, "I never accept sweets." Bhattacharya replied, "There is nothing higher than accepting food that the Lord has directly accepted." Srila Babaji Maharaj sharply retorted, "Whoever eats fish is like a prostitute. If someone has perverted desires and offers foodstuffs to Lord Chaitanya, those preparations can never be accepted as the prasad of the Supreme Lord, because the Lord does not partake of them. Whoever is not a sincere devotee of the Lord cannot understand what a non-devotee is. Even if one offers foodstuffs to the Supreme Lord, if one has perverted intentions, then that offering's never accepted. If one offers the covering of the banana flower because he likes the taste himself, the offering's not accepted by the Supreme Lord. To offer foodstuffs to the Supreme Lord that have been contaminated by one's lusty desires should be considered a great offense. If preparations favored by the great devotees of the Lord are offered, then the offering is considered proper. Krishna tastes foodstuffs that have been tasted by the lips of his pure devotees. If one accepts the grains of a sinful person, his mind becomes impure. One should think, "My worship to the Lord has not fructified yet. How can I obtain the service of a pure devotee of the Lord?" In this way, with a heart full of grief, if one takes banana peels and the discarded skin of an eggplant and boils them without salt and offers them, this attitude of full surrender will cause those foodstuffs to become Mahaprasad. One should think, "My worship to the Lord has not yet manifested. The pure devotee of the Lord accepts nice foodstuffs, but my doing so would only impede my devotion. What will happen to me if I continue eating sumptuously and wearing luxurious clothes?" Thus, one is directed by Babaji Maharaj not to accept food cooked by lustful persons, especially by those who know the actual standard of behavior expected of devotees of Sri Krishna, but who nevertheless indulge in illicit activities. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed Srila Swarup Damodar Goswami as follows: "When one eats food offered by a materialistic man, one's mind becomes contaminated. When the mind becomes contaminated, one is unable to think of Krishna properly. One accepts an invitation from a person contaminated in the material mode of passion. The person who offers the food and the person who accepts it are both mentally contaminated. In the purport to the verse, the first of these verses, Srila Prabhupada cites Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's commentary, saying, people who are materialistically inclined, and sahajiyas, or so-called Vaishnavas who take everything very casually, are both Visai materialists. Eating food offered by them causes contamination, and as a result of such contamination, even a serious devotee becomes like a materialistic man. There are 6 kinds of association: giving charity, accepting food, offering food, talking confidentially, and inquiring confidentially. One should very carefully avoid associating with both sahajiyas, who are sometimes known as Vaishnavas, and non-Vaishnavas or a-Vaishnavas. Their association changes the transcendental devotional service of Lord Krishna into sense gratification. And when sense gratification enters the mind of a devotee, he's contaminated. The materialistic person who aspires after sense gratification cannot properly think of Krishna. Aside from avoiding food prepared by sensualists, one should also take care not eat simply for the satisfaction of one's own tongue. Chaitanya Karanamrta, it is stated, that person who runs here and there, seeking to gratify his palate, who's always attached to the desires of his stomach and genitals, is unable to attain Krishna. Srila Jagadananda Pandit and Lord Chaitanya have both instructed those serious about spiritual advancement to avoid dressing very nicely or taking very palatable foodstuffs. Lord Chaitanya has stated, do not dress luxuriously and do not eat delicious foodstuffs. And that's from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Srila Jagadananda Pandit has instructed, echoing the words of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, do not eat luxurious dishes or dress in fine garments, but always remain humble, serve their lordship, Shri Shri Radha Krishna, in your heart of hearts. And that's from Prema Vivarta. Srila Gaura-kisora Babaji Maharaja instructs us to think that our devotion is not pure, and that only pure devotees can safely accept delicious Mahaprasad, and to thus always eat frugally. He suggests that if one prepares something not generally considered edible, like banana peels and the skin of eggplants boiled with salt, but offers it with genuine humility, it will certainly be transformed into Mahaprasad by the Lord's accepting it. Section 10. The love of Srila Gaura-kisora Das Babaji for Shri Mayapur Dham. Srila Babaji Maharaj exhibited an unmatched, uncompromising spirit toward anything opposing the real conclusions of bhakti. He was above all mundane thought, and one cannot possibly understand why he acted as he did unless one rigidly follows in the footsteps of the Paramahamsa devotees of the Lord. Thus, we should not be surprised that some persons who had his audience hundreds of times were never blessed with his special grace, while others received his mercy at once. One day, a householder devotee from Mayapur went to Kulia to get the association of Srila Babaji Maharaj. The Paramahamsa was seated in a chair made of reeds just within the door of his kutir, cottage. When the grihastha approached him, Srila Gaura-kisora nonchalantly closed the door. At that, the devotee informed an attendant of Srila Babaji Maharaj that he wished to see him. Babaji Maharaj replied, if he wants to have my darshan, then he must give me 2 rupees. The attendant received the money from the grihastha and duly informed Srila Gaura-kisora Das Babaji. Babaji Maharaj then opened the door of the kutir and said, please have a look. The grihastha remained some distance away from the kutir and respectfully offered his prostrate obeisances. By his own sweet voice, Srila Babaji Maharaj drew him closer, affectionately took his hands within his and said, "You have come from Mayapur, the place where my Supreme Master, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, has appeared. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has sent you here, so therefore I have a few words to say to you. Shri Chaitanya will certainly listen to this, and you should take shelter of Krishna by always chanting his holy name. Then there will be no more obstruction in your life." When Srila Gaura-kisora Babaji Maharaj saw the residents of Sri Mayapur, he would always show some special favor and with affection say, "The residents of the Holy Dham." It was always seen that even if someone tried to offer great wealth, he would personally remain indifferent. But then again, he would request different persons to help him by giving him money and other paraphernalia for his service to the Lord's devotees residing in the Dham. One who takes birth in the Lord's Dham is understood to have done so as a result of attaining to a high standard of devotion to the Lord. To take such a birth is an indication that one is practically qualified to be a resident of the spiritual world, and thus his good fortune and good qualities are incalculable. Although such residents may externally appear to be conditioned souls, they are nonetheless spontaneously attracted to the Lord. Even if they perform impious activities within the boundaries of the Dham, they are not to be judged ordinary conditioned souls. Srila Prabhupada has explained that even if someone comes to Vrindavan or Mayapur from outside the Dham, lives and dies there, but performs sinful activities there, still he will have to take only one birth more as an animal. After that birth, he's promoted to the spiritual world. He comments, "Devotees like the Goswamis living in Vrindavan who purposefully commit some sinful activities are born in the bodies of dogs, monkeys, and tortoises in that holy land. Thus they take on these lower life forms for a short while, and after they give up those animal bodies, they're again promoted to the spiritual world. Such punishment is only for a short period, and it's not due to past karma." Srila Gaura-kisora Babaji was fully aware of the unique status of the Dham Vasis, residents of the Dham, and thus he gave them special consideration and respect. Babaji Maharaj further teaches us that it's better not to accept charity for maintaining one's own comforts and personal convenience, though one can enthusiastically do so in order to serve Vaishnavas.